You would think that in modern society, with the prevalence of digital artwork, that digital artists would receive just as much recognition and compensation for their work. And yet, their craft is seen as inconsequential as a child's scribbles, if not more so in the art world. With the influx of digital art in the wake of technological developments, this debate is becoming increasingly relevant to artists and art consumers alike. In addition, the livelihoods of real artists are being affected by biased art shaming surrounding the value, or to many the lack of value, of digital art compared to traditional forms of art, particularly fine art. While I am not a practiced artist visually by any means, and by extension, no professional, I have taken a few art classes, including a digital art class, and I have done a substantial amount of research into this topic, as it is of great importance to my artist friends, family members, and mentors. By the end of this speech, you will understand two of the reasons why digital art should be considered fine art. You will see how digital art requires just as much of an artist as traditional forms of art, as well as how the very nature of the definition of fine art lends itself to an inclusivity that extends to digital art. So the first thing we need to establish is this. What exactly is fine art? Traditionally, fine art has been referred to as art forms that are practiced primarily for their aesthetic and their beauty, as opposed to their functional value. Fine art is generally considered to be grounded in drawing and design-based works. These include painting, sculpture, and printmaking, to name just a few. There are numerous forms of fine art that have been included in this definition over the years, including certain non-design-based art forms such as photography and, in some cases, architecture. Fine art is often contrasted with what is called applied art, in addition to what is categorized as a craft. Examples of applied art include embroidery, interior design, and jewelry. And these types of art are genuinely considered to be utilitarian in art form. However, the gradual widening process of the definition of fine art has complicated the process of ultimately defining the term. New technologies and artistic invention have forced an expansion of the definition of fine art, with acrylic painting and collage art being examples of the two respectively. The once rigid distinction between fine art and decorative art, the latter of which is seen as functional art, has been substantially blurred with the introduction of visual art as a category. So we've established the complex nature of fine art and its ever-changing definition. Now let's take a look at why digital art should be considered fine art. First of all, digital art takes just as much talent, skill, time, and dedication as any other traditional art form. Digital artists don't use computers to cut corners on techniques. While it may be more convenient to make digital art, it is no less difficult. The best digital artists are trained in both digital art forms and traditional art forms so they can get the best of both worlds and still have the technical grounding they need to make good art. According to the Art of Education, there's even a push to encourage the teaching of both traditional and digital art in education because of the different skill sets and experiences they both provide. Digital art merely utilizes another medium. In her 2014 article about digital versus real art, Monika Zagrobelna describes digital media as everything that has a digital outcome. Just as traditional art has a variety of subcategories, so does digital art. Everything is linked by the medium. As a result, the techniques of traditional art forms such as painting, sculpting, and drawing are the same between the mediums of traditional and digital art. Now that we've discussed the complexity of digital artistry, let's talk more about its place in the broader category of fine art. Due to the ever-evolving nature of the definition of fine art, according to the societal and technological advancements of the times, it only makes sense to include such a vast and crucial medium in the categorization of fine art. Digital art is a natural consequence of societal progression, which has been accounted for in the definition of fine art over the years with the inclusion of other forms of art. Logically, it follows that digital art deserves its place as a fine art form. Various modern art forms are considered fine art that are arguably less deserving of the title. An example of this being the Comedian by Italian artist Maurizio Cattelan, who essentially put up an exhibit in an art museum that was a banana duct taped to a wall, and it sold for many $1,000s. The conversation has been refocused away from whether or not digital art should be considered fine art to instead dwell on what exactly art is as a whole. According to Immanuel Kant, art is meant to be good and beautiful. Digital art satisfies both of these requirements as easily as any other traditional art form. The debate is fruitless in this sense and does not diminish the worthiness of digital art to be defined as a fine art form. So, we've developed a greater comprehension of two of the reasons why digital art should be considered fine art across the industry. We have learned why digital art deserves just as much recognition as fine art, for the reasons that digital art takes just as much effort and skill as traditional art, and that the continually changing definition of fine art should logically include digital art because of its nature. We interact with digital art on a daily basis. Some of it is subpar, and some of it is breathtaking. Although traditional art forms will likely never truly die out, and thank goodness for that. In our increasingly tech-based society, digital art is becoming more and more popular. Why wouldn't we consider such a unique and complex art form fine art?